Good afternoon. My name is Taneva, and I will be your conference operator today. At this time, I would like to welcome everyone to the WebLogic Management Pack Overview conference call. All lines have been placed on mute to prevent any background noise. After the speaker's remarks, there will be a question and answer session. If you would like to ask a question during this time, simply press star, then the number 1 on your telephone keypad. If you would like to withdraw your question, press the pound key. Thank you. Mr. Lichtenthal, you may begin your conference.
Hi, everyone. Let me move to PowerPoint here. My name is Claudio Lichtenthal, and I'm joined by Ahilan Punusamy, who's a friend and a colleague of mine. And we're both sales consultants in the middleware team for Oracle Direct. And I welcome you all, and it's nice to have you. If you're wondering why I had pictures of I had Yahoo, the weather service. I figure that we always start conferences and web calls with talking about the weather, so I wanted to be consistent with that. Anyway, so we're going to be talking about WebLogic Management Pack and the Enterprise Manager. So first, I want to have some logistics by showing the agenda. So typically, a lot of times when you see these presentations, folks like to show a lot of PowerPoints and wait for the demo later. What I want to do, just to make it more entertaining or interesting, I'm going to be going back and forth between PowerPoints and demo. And so I run the risk to that it can be confusing and jumping around too much. And so I ask for your apologies for that, your forgiveness, but I think that might make it more interesting because that takes me to the next point. This is not intended to be a training. What Ahilan and I want to do today is to show you the power of the packs, how much it can add to your day-to-day activities. We do trainings a lot. We can do online workshops, live workshops, and if you call your sales reps, the folks who introduce you to this meeting today, they can arrange for you to talk to either one of us too, or we have a whole team. We have a whole team of middleware sales consultants who can also do this. And we have a chat window, and Ahilan is manning that chat window. I think that the way we want to do it is that if the question is more of a yes/no type of question, he's going to give the answer right away. If he feels the question is more of a general type of question, or that it deserves more of an explanation, we're going to table it for the Q&A at the end. So we're going to start, with the meat of the presentation, talk about management, what are the issues that we have, then the solution demo, and then the QA. For those of you who might know me, I love to use metaphors, and the first metaphor I want you to indulge me with is that of an X-ray. And why do I have that? Because I believe that all of us, we either monitor our own health or health of those who we love, our family, and we're constantly. We need to get diagnostics from doctors or go to the hospital, God forbid. But when we do that, we want to know about how are we performing, how is our health performing, and we want to monitor different aspects of our health, and we want to even know how we're complying. Are we taking enough vitamins? Are we eating healthy? And we are also monitoring the life cycle of our lives and those that we care about. And sometimes we, just to hint to the metaphor, we apply patches. We may do surgery, and we want to be able to do those not too painfully, and we don't want them to be obtrusive. We want to be able to go on with our day-to-day activity as we go. And obviously, the metaphor speaks to the fact that we are today talking about an IT environment, and that IT environment is a living organism too. So pretty much we have to do the same thing. We have to diagnose it sometimes, see how it performs, how it monitors. We need to monitor it. We need to see how we're complying to best practices, patch it, and observe its life cycle management. So we have to do that. And if I can extend the metaphor a little bit longer, in my case, for example, I had to get I had an issue with my knee, and I had to get x-rays, and then I had to get MRIs. And the point here is that sometimes we have tools in the medical community, like the x-rays before or this. So these are tools. Imagine a hospital that didn't have these tools, how much longer it would take for them to be able to figure out what is the problem or how to do certain things. And the point of this slide is that sometimes tools, like in this example, an x-ray or an MRI, they tell you different information. This tells you about bones, and this tells you about tissues and ACLs and ligaments and so on. So many times in our calls, people are looking for a silver bullet, one tool that can do it all. And I don't think that is possible. I think that depending on the context of the issue, you need different tools to go at it. And just like you would not use a brain scan to look at your knee, whether you're looking at an issue because you're looking at how JVMs are behaving, or how is the relationship between the middle tier and your database, or how are configuration, how do they compare? There's different ways that we look at our environment and different contexts and different points of views. And really the WebLogic Management Pack is a package of all these different tools that help you with all these activities. So there's 3 numbers. What could these numbers be? 50, 50, 25. Well, I have no idea, but now I know. This is what customers are telling us. We still don't know. This is really the bottom line. We can reduce the number of incidents reported to administrators by over 50%. That's what customers are telling us. Resolution time, how you get to root cause analysis by 50%. We can reduce the time that it takes that. And we can increase the productivity of an admin by over 25%. This is the target. This is why we're here today. So the pack is made up of many different tools that are all integrated together. So depending on how you want to attack the problem, you may use one side of it or another side of it. But they deal with an ample side of many different topics. So performance and availability, this is key across the whole enterprise, not just one server, but the whole enterprise, and across many different domains. We can look at how Java applications are behaving, how a business transaction that has information that doesn't mean anything technically, it's just an order number or a customer name, how that manifests itself throughout different technical components, and seeing where is it that the problem occurs for someone. And we can control changes, and we can control who can make those changes. Some people may not be authorized, and you allow them to change a certain scope of your environment, but not others. And also, there's many tasks that can be very time-consuming, such as, for example, patching. And I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir here. So there's many highlights here that we can talk about. This is another way of looking at it, looking at the whole the whole scope of what the pack can do for you. So there's performance and monitoring and diagnostics. So this is kind of like checking out how things are going, and also being proactively alerted when things are not behaving as they should be. You can set up SLAs where if something is failing your expectations, you can be proactively notified. You can look at configuration, so you can compare through time how configurations change, or you can compare different environments, test and QA and production. And lifecycle management, this has to do with how do we deploy, how do we clone, how do we apply patches. very, very powerful in all of these behaviors. And there's these arrows that are moving around. There's a cycle going on, because the cycle, as you go through these tools, they improve each other. For example, if I'm looking at how configurations have changed, I can see how that has been affecting performance. So I can change some attribute in performance and then see again how I can change the configuration and then see how that can affect the performance. So there's a constant cycle going on between all these attributes that we can affect. And I share this deck and this presentation with some of my colleagues, Ahilan and Brumi and others, and they thought, well, show this, show that. And so because of time, keep in mind one thing, that there's so many things to show that I'm gonna show you what I think are what I call the greatest hits of WebLogic management. Just like in music, you couldn't describe what the work of the Beatles or whatever your favorite band is. A greatest hits CD gives you some idea of what that gives you. So today I want to share my greatest hits of what the WebLogic management pack can do, and I'm sure Ahilan will keep me honest and mention things that I may be overlooking. But how does it deal with? How does it relate to Oracle Enterprise Manager? Some of you may have Oracle Enterprise Manager installed. So and by the way, any product of Oracle, be it the database or WebLogic server, they come with an enterprise manager in itself. The Oracle Enterprise Manager or Cloud Management is a way that you can see everything. So instead of having a console for each plane and this air traffic controller picture that you see, from one plane, from one place, you can supervise all of the different planes. Because in this metaphor, you can't just tell a plane what to do. It has to live in the context of what the other planes are doing in the air at that point. Same with the Oracle Enterprise Manager. You can see everything. You can see all of these different servers. So instead of having to hop into each server and go into the Enterprise Manager of each one, from one place, one centralized place, you can see all of your domains, all of your servers. So it's almost you're the air traffic controller of your environment. And how does it work? So it works the following way. So you have you deploy the Oracle Enterprise Manager in one or more servers that can be clustered, which come and there's a database which persists all the information that can then later be compared between today and a week ago or a month ago. Remind me of the hours. So this is where the air traffic controller sits, if you will, and you have a console from which you can see everything. But how does it know? How does it know about all these different targets, out there? So what happens is you first have to install the target, install the agent. You install an agent in the targets. Once you install the agent, this agent can, through the process of a discovery, it will tell you what plugins make sense for that server. What plugins make sense. Once those plugins are installed and deployed by way of the Enterprise Manager, then they start reporting events to your dashboard. They start telling you, giving you proactive events, or also helping you with when you install something, you don't have to go to each server and install it. You can install it from one place. So again, summary, you have the OMS, and you first install the agent in the target. Once that agent is at the target, now through a process of discovery, you can find out what is the appropriate plugin to deploy on that server in the back end. Ahilan, do you feel like adding anything here? I mean, I want to make sure that at this point I haven't missed anything.
No, Claudio, that's a great explanation. So basically, as Claudio explained, the WebLogic Management Pack is just an extension of the Enterprise Manager framework. So it is just a plugin that adds on to the Enterprise Manager framework by itself. Similar to how you are used to managing your database through Enterprise Manager, adding WebLogic Management Pack to the Enterprise Manager gives you additional perspective about your middleware lifecycle management, patching, compliance, and also monitoring capabilities by extending the framework into the middleware, similar to how you are used to managing your database environment.
Thanks, Ahilan. So let's keep going here. So we've been discussing how this idea of central management, that from one place I can see everything, and I have a whole slew of meaningful statistics that I can be collecting, and I can be informed as to how those environments are acting. So let's switch a little bit, make it more interesting. I want to go to, I can close this window here, and here this is a live environment. I'm looking at one pane of window that shows me everything that I want to see. Now, depending on who I am, I may want to have, this is my home screen, I may want to set it up differently. So if I want, I can go to the welcome page here, and it shows me that maybe I want to go directly to the old targets, or to this screen here, or to whatever this screen is. And in the old targets, if I know that I always want to start from here, where it shows me all the different environments that I want to go after, maybe I want this to be my home screen. But as you can infer from this, there's a ton of customization. So different people can use the tool differently. That's the main point in here. So let me go back to the to my home page. So we'll go back to the home page, and let's go back here to PowerPoint. Again, one point I want to make is that everyone, there's a lot of granularity as to how much control you can give different people. So there's a lot of granularity there. But here in one place, you can see everything. You know, what patches are recommended, what problems are arising, where are you compliant or not. And we're going to talk a little bit about the different places. But right away, you can see how much is up, how much is down, and you can drill down. So let's go back to PowerPoint here. Compliance. Now, when we talk about compliance, what we mean is that we set there are a set of rules or best practices that Oracle recommends or that you can have, such as, for example, passwords have to be 8 characters in length, and they have to have a capital and a number. So there's so many different best practices that you may choose to or not apply to your environment, and then be informed of all those systems that you are in charge of, which ones are compliant or not with this industry standards. So if I go back to PowerPoint here, I mean to the actual system, if I go to enterprise and I go to compliance, so let's go to, say, the dashboard. This will tell me what is compliant and what's not compliant. But more so, if I go to compliance and let's see to the library, this is pretty interesting because it will tell you how many different possibilities there are. For example, here, depending on the type of environment, you have all the different rules that you may turn on or not, and then you can associate targets to them. So you could have certain rules that apply to your production environment, but different ones to your test and different ones to your QA. So let's just dig in a little bit deeper, just to give you an idea of how many there are here. Again, today we're not trying to train, we're just talking about, you know, the potential, how much just to give you an idea of how much is out there. But you can see all the different rules that you can set up for anything to decide whether your environment is being compliant or not, and be alerted if, you know, something will appear in red, if there's a server that just was added and they have different rules and you want to control that. So let's go back to PowerPoint here. So we talked about that. I showed you some of these screens. By the way, I do have the screenshots because I like to be able to also show this presentation if I don't have access to a network. Routing Topology Viewer. This is a great tool, the Topology Viewer. With this, pictures tell millions words, right? One thing is to know what your environment has. It has 20 servers, 10 database, 10 middle tier, or what have you. But to be able to see it speaks so highly. So let's look at how that's done. So I'm going to go into, well, let's look at all the targets. So I can list all my targets, or I can decide which targets I'm after. Today we're talking middle tier, so it makes sense to look at my middle tier environments that I have out there, and I'm going to go to this domain here, and I go in there so I can see how that domain is behaving. I can see that there's 3 servers. I can see versions. I can see whether something is compliant or not. But let's look at the Topology Viewer, which is what we're talking about right now. So I'm looking at the Topology Viewer. And let's get some more real estate here. So this is pretty cool. I can see, this is not PowerPoint. This is real. I can see all my different servers. I can see information in the different servers. But for example, I may want to see more or less, and I can turn it on. Like maybe I want to see JDBC sources. So why would I want to do this? Well, because I want to see interrelationships. Sometimes like this, for example, I know from here that having this database down, it's affecting actually all 3 middle tiers. But the point being that if I had one database that a certain environment is not using, I can see that the other environments would not be affected by that. I can look at, from an application point of view, what are the applications that I'm running in those middle tier servers. Let me turn off the JDBC just to make it less busy, or I could see the actual hosts where all these applications are running. And I can also increase the metrics that I'm using here. I'm going to turn on the metric names and values. So there's a whole bunch of other metrics that I could be supervising, and I want to see it all together in one picture, because that's the best way I can understand my environment and the interdependencies between all the members. In related topologies, let me steal some space here. In related topologies, I can also see configurations. And configurations is really cool because I have a configuration that has a member, and I'm changing a member of that configuration. I can see right away that if I change something in a definition here, it's going to be affecting this. So once again, I'm seeing interrelations between configurations, but at this level, I can even be more specific and say what uses what, or what is used by, from depending on which point of view I want to look at. So I find that the topology is an awesome tool and something that helps a lot.
Yeah,
so that. Go ahead.
Just to add to what Claudio said, it helps you with impact analysis. So when we talk about impact analysis, in your application landscape where you have different systems taking care of different aspects of the business integrated together, so when you want to apply a patch to an OS, so you want to know what level of dependencies are there from the physical hardware perspective to your business applications. And also when you want to upgrade one level of application, where are the different connections are there in the application landscape, so that when the patch is applied to this particular application, what is going to be my validation impact, or what is going to be my retesting impact to ensure that all the components are tested before I apply this patch in the production environment. So this gives a live view of your application infrastructure to help you with almost all 360-degree view of the infrastructure along with your applications, business applications, to perform impact analysis in a much more efficient and best practices way, whatever you have in your setup.
Awesome. Thanks, Ahilan. So here, I like to highlight the words that I think are the most important words in some slide. For example, the customizable, the aspect that different people may be interested in different aspects of a certain server, and different people may want to look at it differently, and how you can maybe compare things through time or across different servers. So you have total choice as to how or where you want to show this different charts. So let's look at it in the demo. So I'm going back here. Let's go to let me go here. Let's open up the domain. Let's look at our domain, and let's look at one of these guys. So I have a server here, and I'm looking at the server, the metrics that I chose to expose. But if I go here and I say, let's monitor performance summary, because that's what we're talking about right now. And so this will show me across a specific time, which I can have a slide effect, so I can compare through time and see how, if I know that someone installed something a week ago, how is this affecting my system. But as you can tell, there's general and memory, heap usage. I mean, you can read for yourselves, but you can see all the different variables that can be seen, how many JDBC connections you have, many different charts. But let's say, well, there's some that you want to add to this. At any point, you can come here to the metric palette and open the ones that you're interested. If you want to see more about JMS metrics, all you have to do is click it, and that will add another chart to here. So right now we're showing JMS metrics. So fully customizable. You can do things like save them, so that then create baselines that you can later compare. And I find this very cool. Also, the fact that you can do overlay. Overlay, that means that I could compare. I know that we made a change over the weekend. How does my performance appear today compared to last week? So I can compare with another day of the week, or I can compare with another WebLogic server. So I know that I have different configuration attributes, so let's compare it against this other guy, the admin server. So when I compare it, what it will do is bring those metrics in here and overlay them. And maybe this example, this is a test scenario, so we don't have that much activity, but you can tell here that how, for example, the heap usage, the memory here, how it's being used, so you can compare between the two servers, which talks to that point that we made at the beginning, that you can see how different configurations or different attributes of those servers are affecting your performance. So let's go back here to PowerPoint. We talked about this, event monitoring. Now this is really cool, because I mean, one way you could be looking at, you're driving your car, you could be looking at your gas and see that you're running out of gas, or you could have something that pops up, like my new car. It shows me when I'm at a certain level in my gas tank. You want to be proactively informed when something is going to happen, and or some SLA that you set up is falling below a certain threshold that you decided that you wanted. And you can even have corrective actions, which means that you can have, with the power of WebLogic, automated scripts that behave or do something automatically. And that's where the enhancements, the improvements to the time of an admin come to play. So let's see a little bit of this real life. So I can go into setup and look at some of this. For example, I would go into incidents and create rules, and I go here and I have a whole bunch of rules. Some may be active and some may not be active, so you can enable them, turn them on, turn them off. I have my Claudio rule here. I want to look at that guy over here, and obviously I would be creating rules. I'm editing because of time to see what's already there. But if I look at the rules, let's look at the rule. When you create a rule, you say what targets is it affecting. It could be your production servers. It could be just your middle tier servers. What's the action you want to take, and what is the threshold you're looking for. So if I edit this here, I'm going to go into edit. right now you can decide the severity level or what have you, but let's say I wanted to add something here, and again, I'm trying to show you the power, how much you can do. So here I go host, and let's say I'm interested in CPU information. So I'm going to search on that, and these are all different metrics that I can set up thresholds for, that when something falls below a certain level, or a listener in the database goes out, or the number of connections in a data source pool falls below a certain number, I want to be proactively informed of it, so I don't have to wait for my users to tell me about it. I already took care of it. So let's cancel out of here, and I'll go back to PowerPoint here. So event monitoring. Middleware Diagnostics Advisor. So this is really cool. This is the system, just like some of you may have in the database, that you have diag and tuning, that gives you recommendations. In this case, we have the Middleware Diagnostics Advisor do something similar, but in the context of middleware. It gives you recommendations of configuration parameters that could be changed according to how Oracle best practices. There's so many different configuration parameters when you start up WebLogic. This will look at your environment, look at your activity, and tell you, hey, you should be adding more of this or less of that. So let's see in the presentation here. Let me look at the targets. I'm going to look at what's a good example here. If I go to my middleware targets, and Ahilan, feel free to pop in whenever you feel like, yeah, if I'm missing anything. But let's see. I'm looking at let's look at this guy here. So here, this is the view where you see all your targets. You see the version, the type of target it is, what's up, what's down, your compliance scores. So this system right now is a little bit slower than the other one. Here I am, but I can see that the diagnostic findings, which is something that you can schedule and it could be running constantly. In this case, there was a finding, so I'm going to click there, and I'm going to wait for it to drill down to the finding. Gives you time to look at the rest of the window. So I apologize if I am going fast. It's just that there's so much to show you. Here, let's drill down on the server that had the issue, but I can see already that the threat pool was the reason why we're being alerted about this or recommended about this. And I'm waiting for the screen to come. To refresh, and so here it tells me what is the issue that I found and what is the recommendation that it came up with. Ahilan, you're not in mute, are you? I know that you like this tool a lot, so if you have any other thoughts or that you want to share.
Yeah, so basically Diagnostic Advisor is a proactive ways for you to understand what is happening in the system, because traditionally if you look at SLAs, alert and notification, they are all reactive. So it happens only after some event has occurred, just like Claudio created a rule that said if the CPU usage goes above 80%, then you get a notification. But what happens at 78th percentile? So what happens when the CPU usage is going up before it hits the SLA. So the Diagnostic Advisor monitors the information or the health of the system, and it predicts that maybe this could be an area of concern, and it gives you the findings as part of the display in the summary page of the domain level itself. So it guides you through some aspects of the system that could potentially cause some issues in the future.
Thanks. So let's move on to JVM. So we all know in the Java world, we have one or more Java virtual machines running, and what goes on in the JVM, sometimes it's a black box. We don't really know what is going on. Now we have the visibility to see what is going on, how many threads are running. how is memory being used? How is the garbage collection being handled? You have all the visibility. But what's really very, very important, and what distinguishes this piece of the pack to others, is this bidirectionally. The idea that we can span across different environments, but more importantly, how is something in the JVM behaving because of the database and vice versa? And we'll see some of this in our scenario. Let's see, I'm going to, if I'm looking at one application here, I'm going to go into, and I'm going to look at the JVMs that are running there. And I have two different use case systems. That's, oh, did you want to say something?
Yeah, just to give you an introduction of composite application. So composite application is nothing but a business view of application. So when we say business view of an application, let's say we have an inventory management application, or let's say timesheet application, that could have a different components to it. It could have a web application, it could have an integration layer, it could have a database layer, and it could have a web server for static page caching. So rather than we having to manage all these individual components separately, we will be able to group them together into a single view called the composite application. So when you create a composite application view, the entire landscape of the application is consolidated into one view for you to manage.
Yeah, and I knew that in this case, in this environment, we have a use case to share with you. And, you know, I skipped on the composite because it's something that more, you know, if you're a SOA type of environment, you'll be familiar with that. But the more important part here is that you have two JVMs. I'm going to drill down on this JVM because this composite, it travels to two different servers that have two different JVMs. We're going to look at this JVM, but as you can see, there's a lot of other metrics from the JVM point of view that we can see here. I can see my performance diagnostics. That will show me how different threads are locking or not one another. So there's a ton of information that you get, and I'm going to wait for the screen to refresh here. Active threads by state, how much CPU is being used, how much memory, garbage collection. This is an issue that happens a lot with JVMs. And I'm going to go to the actual live thread analysis to what is going on right now, because a lot of what you can do here is historically you can compare how things have compared across time. So let's, in this case, let's say that we know that there is a problem. Someone has a slow response time, and we want to understand why. So we're looking at this JVM. Let's look at the JVM part of this, and I can see that there's a whole bunch of things that could be going wrong. I could be waiting because of some remote call, or there's some disk issue, or some network issue. In this case, I know that there's this is in red. So there's a database issue going on. So something is waiting for the database to be completed. So I know that I can click on over here, and again, we can go a lot slower if you want to do more one-on-ones with your company, but I'm just touching the top of the crest of how much this gives you. And I also want to give enough time for questions at the end. So what I see here on that database weight, I see a lot of information, but what I like the most is that I can actually see and find the actual SQL that is causing this issue. So if you're talking to a DBA, you might say, hey, that application is doing X or Y or Z, and do it differently, or, you know, whatever the issue is, but you get to the actual SQL statement of where that problem is. So maybe the problem was found out in the middle tier, that a screen was slow, but you can even go drill down to all the way down to the database to see where the issue happened. So let's go back here.
Yes.
So I show you this. Oh yeah, did you want to? Yeah,
yes,
go ahead.
Just to add to it, generally in a production environment, in a typical setup, the administration team or the infrastructure team are very reluctant to deploy any JVM diagnostic tools because the footprint what these tools add on top of the production environment is significant. But the way OEM is architected and JVM D is created, it does not add significant overhead to the JVM performance or the JVM availability. So we see a lot of customers use this in production, and even in Oracle Cloud, we manage the entire infrastructure using a WebLogic management pack. So it is not going to have any significant impact on the production environment, and it is ready for production environment usage.
That's a great point. So you're not taxing the system by putting something extra. You're throwing another variable into the mix, but that variable is not decreasing the performance. So that's interesting. Now, this is another great piece of it, the log viewer. If any of you ever had to hunt down a log, sometimes where they appear may be in a very deep into your system where you find the log, and it could be the path could be different across different logs, and you need to have a user ID, a root access, or whatever to go into that system and look at that log and find where is the problem, what is the log trying to tell me. But more so, sometimes the issue spans across many different servers. So now you want to correlate what is this log in server A, how is that comparing to log B. What we have with the pack is that every event is given what's called an execution context ID, and with that, those events can be correlated. So if I'm in the server, let me see, this guy got, let me reload the page here. So let's cancel out of what we were doing. I'm going to go to one of my middle tier servers, or let's go to the domain here. And let's say I actually have to be at the server level. Let's find one of, I'm going to come here just to show you where the logging is. And I simply want to show you all the filtering that you can have. Let's see, where are the logs? Okay, here we go. So let's view the log messages. And what you have here is you have a very, very wide capability of looking at logs, filtering how important the issue is, or the error is, and whether the message contains something or is. So all types of Boolean logic that you can apply instead of having to grep for this information with Linux know-how. But not only that, once you get to some issue, you can then view related messages, either by time or by event context ID. So it will group logs across different systems. Now this is starting to tell you a more juicy and informative story about how all these issues are maybe correlating one another. And just think about the time savings of you having to log into all these different environments. And also, don't forget that sometimes you don't want to give people access to all those systems. So here you have a window into those systems without giving them root access into those hosts. So moving more to a lifecycle type of topic, enhanced configuration comparison. So here you can compare configurations across many different servers, and this is great. Some of these files, as you all know, can be many lines of XML code, and that can be very, very difficult. With the configuration comparison tool, you can compare two at the same time. So let me show you how this would work. I'll give you an idea. I go into Enterprise, and I go to Configuration, and let's go to Compare. And maybe let's see what I can compare. So before I go into here, I want to filter just check out how many different things you can compare. But I'm looking for Oracle WebLogic Server. So if my alphabet proves me right, over here. And once I have this, now I can search the different servers. So let's grab one of these guys, and I'm going to select. Now you could have saved the configuration and then compare this to a saved configuration. But just so you have an idea, I'm going to compare this guy, and I'm going to go through this wizard, and I'm going to choose now the configuration that I want to compare it to. So let's say I could be comparing Q&A with production, or what the configuration was last week to what it is this week. So you would choose the server and then go next. And here's where you have really cool filtering. Sometimes you want to ignore certain things because of course they're going to be different, and sometimes you want to be notified and highlight those areas that are of more importance. And so there's a lot of granularity and more. For time's sake, I'm going to go back to PowerPoint, and the fact is that at the end you can even synchronize. So whatever differences you may have found, you can have the configuration management, the interface manager, fix those changes on your behalf. So that's very, very powerful, because here's another area where you're like minimizing the type of errors, manual errors you may have. So this is showing me the end. Once I run that job, it would point out all the things that are different, all the things that are the same. There's the area of patching and Oracle support. There's a with this is huge. If you ever had to apply a patch, you know how time-consuming that can be. Sometimes you have requirements for the patch. Sometimes you don't even know what the patch that you may have to apply. For the benefit of time, I'm just going to show you the screen captures, but the fact is that with this tool, you can search for what patches you might need for that environment, for that version, and it will give you a list of all the patches that are required. And once you have those patches, you can say apply those patches to those environments that require that patch, and that's all done automatically, automated. So it's not you having to run scripts manually; it's the tool doing it for you. And what's best is that if there's any issues, you can back out of the changes and go back to the environment before you made those changes. Very, very, very powerful. So just like that, you can also have environments that you can clone. You can do cloud cloning, but you can also clone a WebLogic environment or a database environment. And these are images that are standardized. So that means that you know that they've been patched. You know that they work. Now you want to deploy them to a new server, and you can be assured that it's going to work. So there's a lot of automation in the area of patching. In this screenshot, what I'm showing is the fact that in this case, I want to provision a new WebLogic server, so I have 3 different choices of the size of the server that I want to provision. Very powerful. Which brings me to my last, my last greatest hits, and different people like to point out other aspects, and there's many that I haven't. But I think that this is kind of like, this is it all. It says it all because at the end of the day, we're trying to serve businesses that need to be 7/24, that have to be responsive to customers, to users, to employees, and many times what we know is someone calls in and says, I have this problem, ABC, or my order 1, 2, 3. You don't know where the problem is. There's no way to correlate a business information like an order ID to all these back-end systems, web services, enterprise Java beans, servlets, all JMS queues, all of those things. So what this side of the PAC, the Business Transaction Management, what it will do is it will link that little business information you have to what are all the pieces where it traveled. So let's look at this at work. So let me pretend to be a customer, and I'm going to be let's say I'm going to be a Healan here, and I'm going to say I want 9 of this, and 8 of this, and 7 of this. So now the scenario is I'm some user using some application, and I submit this order. and I get a response. And let's say that for whatever reason, I've had an issue with this, and I call a call center. Now the call center calls operations, and they say, well, what's going on? This person has, doesn't know this or that. So what they can use is in the pack, in that area of the pack, and by the way, I'm showing a very, an older version of this. That's why it may look a little bit different, but the point will be the same, that I can search a message log, and I can search my message log with whatever information I have. So maybe what I know is that the customer name contains the name Ahilan. So I'm going to look for Ahilan, and I'm going to say OK. And then let's say I know that it happened maybe any time in the last hour, and I'm going to search. So I see the information in the log, and let's look at this. This is very cool. I have visibility into the actual XML payload of this transaction. So I have a lot of information available to me. Go back to my earlier metaphor of the X-ray. I can see inside, but not only that, I can do some really cool stuff. For example, I can let me drop that guy. And I can look at all the transactions that had to do with that business transaction. All I had was the name Ahilan. All I had was an order number. But now I have much, much more. I can see all the different pieces, when they run, how they run, what was the lapse of time between all those different components, whether it's a database, whether it's a servlet, or whatever is the component. I can see where is the problem, which helps me drill down and see where that might be. And once again, disclaimer time, there is so much more to the BTM piece of how we can see this. I can see the top services, the top transactions, and for each one of them, I'm waiting for this to refresh. Let me go to transactions. Okay. For any transaction in your system, now if I double click, I can see all types of metrics. And now it seems like I'm redundant. It seems like I said things that I said before. The difference is that we're looking at it from a different context. Just like my earlier metaphor, an X-ray told me the bones in my knee, but the MRI told me about the tissues. This is how are the different components, which may be running on different servers, how are they behaving together in a coherent business transaction? So that's the kind of visibility you have. And I'm at 2:53, so I want to open it for, well, before I open it for questions. Oh, go ahead, Ahilan, did you have a question or something? Yeah,
so the BTM is, you can think of BTM as a time machine that can go to the past. It cannot go to the future. So this is a very critical component of customer experience. So customer experience is not only around how they work with the product, it also involves how they communicate or talk to the support and management aspects of the system, which is your support team, your customer service team, and all. So when a customer calls you with a problem, the BTM enables you to go back in time and relive the transaction with the customer. So you have a lot more data than traditionally what you have in your hand to help customers solve an issue. So it enables you to just go to the past, exactly walk through the customer, exactly with step-by-step what happened, with what kind of data that was sent over, what kind of response the system provided, and then also identify the root cause of the issue and give a resolution on the fly, because BTM is a critical component and it is tightly integrated with the management pack. For example, if as part of the customer transaction, if there is a problem with the database and the database through an exception, you will be able to walk through the transaction, identify the problem, and if possible, address the problem with your customer on the phone itself. So it's very powerful from that perspective.
Cool. So in summary, let me just breeze through this, the idea of multiple, monitor. You see availability, performance across tiers. You can see highlight and insight into your JVMs. Trace, as Ahilan said, things sometimes deal with time and how time affects. We're always studying how different changes we've made, how do they affect our environment. We can trace through time or across different tiers, discover dependency, and reduce the problem resolution time and improve your lifecycle management, automating, and with patching. These are all the benefits: minimize the downtime, lower your IT costs, increase your agility to responding to issues. And of course, obviously I'm rushing because I want to hear from you and any questions you might have. So with that said, Ahilan, were there any chat questions that you want to bring up now, or should we open up the line? Do you have anything on the queue?
We can open up the line. I do not see any questions in the chat window.
Cool. So, Taniva, if you don't mind explaining how to ask a question.
I sure will. At this time, if you would like to ask a question, press star, then the number 1 on your telephone keypad. That's star 1. We'll pause for a moment to compile the Q&A roster. And there are no questions at this time.
Okay. So what's important is that you can reach us. You can reach us. Please contact your Oracle representative. They know how to get a hold of Ahilan or myself or any of my other colleagues that know this. I want to leave you with this URL if you have a chance to write it down. I'll come back to this slide, but I'll show you what the URL does. So I'll go into, I'll go right here, HTTP. Actually, I could have just clicked it. So I'm going to click on that, and it's just a very simple website, but what it has is a kind of a summary of a lot of what we talked about today. So if I go to the WebLogic Management tab, you can get the data sheet, the white paper, and also, nowadays, there's tons of awesome videos out there. Some of these are maybe just 5 minutes long, but they go a little bit deeper into a lot of the topics that we covered today. So I urge you to go there and check them out. So you will see some of the material that we covered today and much, much more. And, of course, you can navigate through other pieces of technology that we have out there. So I'll go back to show you the link in case you're interested. And again, you know, there's tons in the Oracle site, but I wanted to put all the videos together. Even here, if I go to more Enterprise Manager videos, there's a channel that Oracle has, which has all of the different videos available to you, how to install it, how to manage it. Very, very powerful. So this brings us to the end. I want to thank you all for your time today. Please reach out to us. This is a great tool. I never feel like I give it enough justice, and I'm sure Ahilan feels the same way. Luckily, Ahilan runs, for example, a live workshop, but we do those over the web as well. So, so please reach out, and we'd love to hear from you. And so thank you for your time.
This concludes today's conference call. You may now disconnect.